I think short-term gold and silver look good. I think we've already had a pullback. And, all this talk about minting trillion-dollar coins simply shines a light on what's going on here in the United States, that we are creating money out of thin air. We're debasing the currency, and that's a great environment for buying gold. But also look at other commodities. Look at the price of oil, which has been moving up. It's at a 4-month high here today. I think the chart looks very bullish for oil. Remember, we got as high as about $150 a barrel before the financial crisis in 2008. We could be challenging those highs again before the end of 2013. And an environment where you have rising commodity prices is also a good environment for gold and silver.
But you know what, Jim? What I find quite confusing about gold these days is it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly what the driver is, right? I mean, in the past you might have said, oh, it's driven by inflation or geopolitics. We don't seem to have much inflation. There's no real geopolitical problems at the moment. I mean, what really is driving it? Is it just a currency inverse trade?
No, I think it's driven by different things at different times. Sometimes it's the safe haven trade, and it trades along with bonds, with the dollar, with what used to be the Japanese yen before the new policy. But sometimes it's strictly a weak dollar inflation trade, and it has this tendency to bounce back and forth to different camps. So it's hard to pinpoint.
You can't say there's no inflation, though. What do you base the idea that there's no inflation on?
I didn't say there's no inflation. I think there's inflation in
several
things.
No, not you, but
sometimes. Oh, yeah, no doubt
about
it.
Somebody just said there's no inflation.
Well, there's not a huge amount of concern about inflation right now. I have no doubt that down the line, that this party is going to end probably in a wall of inflation, but there's not a huge amount right now, right?
There's inflation right now. The government just lies about it. Like, I just did a YouTube video today exposing the fraud behind the CPI calculations. The government isn't even close to capturing the true extent of rising prices. The CPI is a total fraud.
What's a more accurate number?
Well,
what should the government be telling us?
The more accurate numbers are actually prices. I'll give you an example. With newspapers and magazines, according to the government, between 1999 and 2012, magazine and newspaper prices are up by 35%. But if you actually look at the prices that are on the covers of the magazines that the government is using, they're up by 135%. So the actual price of newspapers and magazines is up 3.5 times faster than what the government claims when they calculate the CPI. All these numbers are wrong. In fact, if you look at health insurance, the actual cost of health insurance is rising 5.5 times faster than what the government uses for the CPI. All the books are cooked here. These are not real numbers. We're already dealing with inflation that's probably between 7 and 10% a year, and it's about to get a whole lot worse.
Yep, understood, and certainly anyone who goes to the grocery feels it as well. Grizz, come in on this conversation.
Yeah, Peter, I just want to ask you a quick question. Last week when the Fed had its meeting and they broke, some of the members showed a little bit of dissension to end QE a little bit early. Do you think that's noise, or do you think that's a real thing and they might end it before 2013, and how that affect the gold trade?
Well, I think it is just noise. I think they might talk about being responsible, but they're never going to act responsibly, because if the Fed ever took away the QE, this whole phony recovery that was built on the foundation of QE will collapse. The U.S. economy, as it's currently structured, cannot survive rising interest rates. The Fed has to be there to prop it up. Now, of course, that's the wrong thing. We should let this phony economy implode so we can replace it with a viable one. But none of the politicians, including the central bankers, want to allow this economy to swallow the bitter tasting medicine that we need to heal the problem. So no, they're going to continue the QE. I don't care what they say. I care about what they do. They're going to keep on printing money. They're going to keep on monetizing debt until they produce a currency crisis and a sovereign debt crisis. Then they'll act, but they're not going to act in advance.
A difficult thing to do, Peter, if they want to get re-elected.